Hockey Inside Out, presented to you by the Gazette.
Welcome back to another season of Hockey Inside Out. This year our show will be done weekly, showing up every Thursday on HIO. For the first show today, I'm joined by Canadiens beat writer Pat Hickey and our Monday morning quarterback, Jack Todd. The Canadiens this season seem to be a bubble team as far as the playoffs, most people think. Jack, what's your biggest concern for this team heading into the season?
You're going to get me in trouble. The Price zombies are going to be after me. They're Carey. You have to be careful, but I think that the biggest issue is Carey Price. If he's the goalie he was in 2010, 2011, they're a good team, second, third round of the playoffs as possible. If he plays like he did the last 15 games of last season into the playoffs, then they've got a problem. And at this stage, I think we've seen one game that kind of fell in each category. Waiting to see.
I've always said he's sort of like the coach's kid in minor hockey, right? He's, no matter what he does, going back to Bob Gainey, calling him the thoroughbred. He is invited to was invited to the Canadian Olympic team tryout camp. Pat, can he be Team Canada's goalie?
I think that they're counting on him. It's one of those things that I think it's whoever plays well the first half of the season. But Canada may have the fourth or fifth best goaltending going into the Olympics. Every other country seems to have solid guys that they can count on. And Canada, you have a gold medalist in Luongo, but I mean, he couldn't even be the number one goaltender on his team last year. You got Fleury, who was basically benched during the playoffs last year in Pittsburgh, off to a good start this year. But I think that's the key. Whoever is playing well is going to do it, and it could be Carey Price.
And you can't talk about Carey Price without bringing up Lars Eller. When they traded Yaroslav Halak, the Canadiens got Lars Eller in return. He's in the top 10 in scoring early in the season. Jack, can he finish there?
Did I mention Pierre Gauthier is a genius, by the way?
He made one good move.
You don't have to. Yeah, he'll tell you.
Although if the Blues win the Stanley Cup this year with Yaroslav Halak, people might be thinking differently.
Yeah, no, I think Eller can do it. I've seen a lot of things, and it's not just the points, although it's nice to see the points come with him, because I've seen games when he seemed to be dominating all over the ice, but the points didn't come. This time, he's getting the points to go with the rest of it. He's got the speed, the size, the hands, and the line mates, so it's possible.
What's the biggest change you've seen in him, Pat? You're around the team on a daily basis. Is he bigger, or what's the biggest difference?
He's bigger, but he's more explosive. He says he's not necessarily relying on strength. He's relying on that explosive first step, getting in front of guys. You noticed the other night he was battling Kimmo Timonen, and he was saying, that somebody was saying, you won that big battle. He said, well, Timonen's not the strongest guy in the NHL. He said the thing on that play was I got to step on him, I got ahead of him. And that's what made that play.
Well, the egg line they're being called. I know Brendan Gallagher said his words were, "It sucks."
Yeah, well, it's
anyway,
cracked.
That's right. Anyway, we'll be back after this break. Welcome back to Hockey Inside Out. One player who takes a lot of heat on the website from the comments is David Desharnais. Little David, or DD. Pat, did Marc Bergevin make a mistake when he signed him to a 4-year contract?
We don't know yet. I think at the time it seemed like he got a bargain there, 4 years at $3.5 million. Desharnais right now, I think, is trying to find himself. He's finding where he fits in. I don't think that he's going to be a Canadian for the entire 4 years of that contract. The question is whether he's going to be a very highly paid fourth liner or whether he's going to hang on to one of those top line spots.
With Max Pacioretty, those two had a chemistry together. Can you see that coming back, Jack?
I can see it coming back. I think what's happening here, part of what's happened is he had a bad year in the lockout season. He just never kind of got back to where he was. The contract might have weighed on him a little bit. You definitely want to see more out of him, but I wouldn't write him off yet, although my email's full of people who have.
The other French-Canadian star on the team now, of course, Daniel Briere coming to Montreal. He's old, but I don't think you ever lose your hands or you ever lose your vision. I think he'll help them on the power play. Was that a mistake signing him, Pat, or what's your take on that?
No, I think there's a stopgap measure. He's there for 2 years. They had everybody said Vinny Lecavalier got away, but they weren't prepared to make a long-term commitment to Lecavalier. Briere was willing to accept a 2-year deal. He has to work on that line with Desharnais. He has to work himself in there. Pacioretty, who's now hurt, hopefully he'll be back soon, but Pacioretty and Desharnais have that great chemistry, and Briere has to figure out where he fits into that line.
Mm-hmm. Pacioretty, is he going to be the leading scorer again this year, you think, Jack?
No, I don't think so. The leading scorer is going to be someone on the Eller line.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure which one.
We need to come up with a better name for that than the egg line. We got to come up with something
Lars
else.
and the Galleys.
Well, they want to be known as the kid line. That's if nothing
line
else.
is just awful.
Well, if anyone at HIO has any ideas, put your comments out there, and we'll come up with a better line than a better name for the line than the egg line. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Hockey Inside Out. It was a scary scene the opening night of the season at the Bell Centre with George Parros being carried off on a stretcher. We had a poll up on HIO before the season started, and 64% of fans said they wanted fighting kept in the NHL. After the Parros incident, we ran a similar poll, and 60% still wanted it kept in. Pat, will the NHL ever get rid of fighting?
I don't think so, because I think, as you just pointed out, it's popular with the fans. Fans like to see it. I think the biggest problem I have with fighting is a lot of it's unnecessary. And I think that Max Pacioretty made a good point when he talked about the first game. The Canadiens were involved in 5 fights. Parros was in 2 of them. And if you go back and look at the fights, none of them had any bearing on the game, except for the last one when Parros got knocked out, and that just took all the wind out of the Canadian sails.
The thing that got me, after the game, after that fight when he was carried off, people were stunned silence. But the same people were up on their feet cheering the fight. I know, Jack, would you take fighting out of the NHL today if you were the commissioner?
I would take it out, but I'm not the commissioner. And, I think when Bettman first came in, he wouldn't have been able to do it at that time. He was a new commissioner. Now Gary can get what Gary wants. And he's got the fact of the NFL lawsuit behind him. He can go to the owners and say, look, we've got to get it out. But I don't think he will until you see a scene where, Parros and Orr hook up and you have a stampede to the exits. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't happen. And barring that or a death on the ice from fighting, I don't see it going out.
The one thing that might factor into this is that NFL lawsuit. Mm-hmm. And if the NHL faces a similar sort of thing, here's a league that's been very conscious about barring hits to the head. But now they allow players to pound each other in the head. It doesn't make any sense to me.
And they're taking the helmets off thing. That game with Travis Moe and the 2 guys looking at each other. Are you going to take your helmet off? Or are you going to take your helmet off?
That's a joke. I mean, one of the things what they were trying to do was they were trying to get each other to knock each other's helmet off so they wouldn't be penalized, get the extra 2 minutes for playing without the equipment. But I think one of the things, if the NHL feels that it's going to let itself open to a lawsuit like the NFL had, then they might take this more seriously.
Money talks, right?
Money talks.
Speaking of money talks, PK Subban. Contract year. Jack, do they sign him this year?
Oh, I think they've got to try.
Mm-hmm.
If Don Meehan's open to it, I sure hope they've got to make a move because he's the guy going forward. And you don't have, there's 2 kids in the league now that have both won Norris trophies, and they're in Ottawa and Montreal, and you don't want to lose the one that's in Montreal.
Is it $8 million a year like Kessel, Pat? How much does he get?
I would think that that's at least that. I think that's one of the things. That's probably the starting point in the negotiations. There might be some fiddling around as far as signing bonuses and different ways of structuring the contract. It all depends what PK wants. I think he wants to stay in Montreal. I think that he will make it as easy as possible for them to sign it, but he's not going to take much of a discount.
Andrei Markov, another defenseman going through his last year. If you want to know how good Andrei Markov is, you just need to look at what happened to Mike Komisarek when he didn't have Andrei Markov as a partner anymore. Jack, is he a guy worth bringing back again after this year?
I think he is. From what I've seen, last year I think was an off season for Markov. The knee just, it wasn't that the knee wasn't there. It was just after so much time off, it took him a while to get up to speed. From what I've seen this year, he's had a couple of bad luck plays on the ice, but he's the old Andrei Markov. He's got 4 or 5 good years left.
Another guy in his contract year is the captain, Brian Giunta. Does he come back, Pat? Is this the farewell Montreal tour for Brian Giunta?
I think it might be just because they have a chance to get bigger. Giunta has lots of heart. We saw a great goal the other night going to the net. He does all the things you want of a captain leading on the ice and things like that. But I just think that they can take that money, maybe give some of it to Subban, maybe upgrade at that position.
If he's not back, Jack, who's the next captain of the Canadiens?
I think we already talked about him. It's got to be Subban if they can sign him. I would like to see them go with a younger captain. You'll have several veterans, but they're not guys who are in Subban's league as a player. And, you want stability. When you have a captain that's your captain for 10 years, that stabilizes the organization. Subban has at least that much good hockey ahead of him. He'd be my guy. PJ Stock would say he's not loved in the room, but PJ's full of something.
I'd consider Brandon Prust. How about you, Pat?
I would think of Prust or Josh George is possibly. I think one of the things that Subban, though, it might be part of the negotiations.
That's a possibility. Well, we don't know if Brian Jonathan will be back next year, but we know we'll be back here next week on Hockey Inside Out. Hope you enjoyed the first show of the season.